Hello family, welcome back to our channel. King Felipe VI of Spain arrived in the flood-ravaged town of Orihuela, a place that had been severely impacted by the recent catastrophic floods. His visit was intended to offer support and solace to its beleaguered residents, many of whom had lost everything in the deluge. The town, nestled in the heart of the Valencia region, had been one of the areas hardest hit by the recent devastating floods. The sheer scale of the destruction was overwhelming. Images of submerged homes, businesses, and vehicles had shocked the nation, bringing attention to the urgent need for aid and reconstruction. The king's visit was meant to be a show of solidarity with those affected by the disaster, a gesture to reassure the people that they were not alone in their suffering. However, instead of the gratitude and appreciation he might have expected, the king was met with a wave of anger and resentment. Many residents felt abandoned by the government and the monarchy. This reaction underscored the growing disconnect between the Spanish monarchy and its people, highlighting the deep-seated frustrations and discontent that had been simmering for years. The visit, intended to heal, instead revealed the rift that had formed between the rulers and the ruled. Days of torrential rain had transformed the usually tranquil rivers and streams of southeastern Spain into raging torrents of destruction. Homes and businesses were inundated with floodwaters, turning streets into canals and forcing residents to seek refuge on rooftops. The deluge left a trail of devastation in its wake, claiming lives, shattering communities, and causing billions of euros in damage. The Valencia region, known for its fertile agricultural lands, was particularly hard hit, with the town of Orihuela bearing the brunt of nature's fury. As the floodwaters receded, the true extent of the damage became horrifyingly clear. Homes were reduced to rubble, businesses were destroyed, and livelihoods were washed away. In Orihuela, the situation was particularly dire. The town, with its rich history and vibrant culture, was now a scene of despair and desolation. Residents, many of whom had lost everything, were struggling to come to terms with the magnitude of the disaster. Amidst the wreckage, a sense of anger and frustration began to simmer, directed at what many perceived as a slow and inadequate response from the authorities. King Felipe VI, upon his arrival in Orihuela, was met with a reception that was anything but welcoming. Instead of cheers and expressions of gratitude, the king was confronted by angry residents, some of whom booed and jeered as he made his way through the devastated streets. The king, visibly taken aback by the hostility, listened patiently as residents vented their frustrations about the lack of support and assistance in the wake of the disaster. The king's visit, intended to be a gesture of comfort and solidarity, had inadvertently exposed the raw anger and frustration simmering beneath the surface in flood-ravaged Orihuela. The residents' anger stemmed from a number of factors. The flood had wreaked havoc on their lives, destroying homes, businesses, and infrastructure. The emotional toll was immense, with many families displaced and struggling to find shelter and basic necessities. Many felt that the government's response to the disaster had been slow and inadequate. The initial reaction was marked by confusion and a lack of coordination, which only exacerbated the situation. People were left to fend for themselves in the critical first hours and days. They pointed to the lack of sufficient warning about the severity of the floods, which left them unprepared. Despite weather alerts, the communication was poor, and many residents did not receive timely information to evacuate or take necessary precautions. The delay in deploying emergency services was another major issue. Emergency vehicles and personnel arrived late, and their efforts were hampered by the scale of the disaster. This delay cost precious time and, in some cases, lives, and the bureaucratic hurdles they faced in accessing aid and assistance. The process was mired in red tape, with residents having to navigate complex forms and procedures to get the help they desperately needed. This added to their frustration and sense of abandonment. Adding to their frustration was a sense that their plight was being ignored by the authorities in Madrid. Despite the widespread media coverage and public outcry, the response from the central government was seen as lackluster and disconnected from the reality on the ground. They felt that the king's visit, while well-intentioned, was too little, too late. The visit was seen as a symbolic gesture rather than a substantive action to address their needs. Many residents felt that real help was still out of reach. Their anger, therefore, was not directed at the king personally, but rather at the institutions he represented. They felt that these institutions had failed them in their hour of need, leaving them to deal with the aftermath of the disaster on their own, but rather at the institutions he represented, institutions they felt had failed them in their hour of need. The sense of betrayal was palpable, as residents felt that their cries for help had fallen on deaf ears, and the systemic failures had compounded their suffering. The government was quick to condemn the protests against the king, calling them disrespectful and unacceptable. They argued that the king was there to offer support, and that his visit should not be politicized. However, the government's condemnation only served to further inflame the situation. Critics accused the government of being out of touch with the suffering of the people and of prioritizing the monarchy over the needs of its citizens. The incident in Orihuela sparked a national debate about the role of the monarchy in modern Spain. While the king enjoys a significant degree of popularity, particularly among older generations, there is a growing segment of the population that questions the relevance and expense of the monarchy in the 21st century. This debate is further fueled by Spain's complex history with the monarchy, which was abolished in 1931 and only restored in 1975 after the death of dictator Francisco Franco. The king's encounter with the angry residents of Orihuela highlights the challenges facing the Spanish monarchy as it seeks to remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. The incident underscores the delicate balance the monarchy must strike between upholding tradition and adapting to the evolving expectations of the Spanish people. It also raises questions about the future of the monarchy in a country grappling with economic inequality, political polarization, and a growing sense of disillusionment with traditional institutions. The anger directed at the king in Orihuela is not an isolated incident. It reflects a broader trend of growing distrust in traditional institutions, not just in Spain, but around the world. From governments to religious organizations to the media, traditional institutions are facing a crisis of legitimacy as people increasingly question their motives, competence, and accountability. This erosion of trust is driven by a confluence of factors, including economic inequality, political polarization, the spread of misinformation, and the rise of social media. In an increasingly complex and uncertain world, people are seeking new sources of authority and leadership. They are demanding greater transparency, accountability, and responsiveness from those in positions of power. The Spanish monarchy stands at a pivotal juncture, a moment in history where its future hangs in the balance. The decisions made today will echo through the corridors of time, shaping the destiny. The incident in Orihuela serves as a stark reminder that even institutions as seemingly enduring as the monarchy are not immune to the forces of change. The floods that ravaged the streets of Orihuela were not just a natural disaster, they were a catalyst for a broader societal reckoning. People took to the streets, not just to protest the flood damage, but to voice their frustrations with a system they feel has failed them. The Spanish monarchy, like its counterparts in other countries, faces a choice: adapt to the changing expectations of its people or risk becoming increasingly irrelevant. The crowds with their protest signs are a testament to the growing demand for transparency, accountability, and modernization. Monarchs engaging with the public is no longer a ceremonial gesture, it is a necessity for survival in a rapidly evolving world. The king's response to this incident and to the broader challenges facing the monarchy will likely determine its fate in the years to come. King Felipe VI's actions in addressing the public and meeting flood victims are steps in the right direction, but they must be part of a larger, sustained effort to rebuild trust and demonstrate relevance. His ability to empathize, to listen, and to act decisively will be scrutinized by a populace that is increasingly vocal and empowered. The outpouring of anger in Orihuela should serve as a wake-up call, not just for the Spanish monarchy, but for all institutions that rely on public trust and support. The angry crowd is a symbol of a deeper discontent that cannot be ignored. Public demonstrations across Spain are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger narrative of a society in flux, demanding more from its leaders and institutions. In an era of unprecedented change and uncertainty, the only way to maintain legitimacy is to listen to the concerns of the people, respond to their needs, and demonstrate a genuine commitment to serving the common good. Community meetings where leaders listen to public concerns are more than just photo opportunities. They are essential forums for dialogue and understanding. The monarchy must show that it is not just a relic of the past, but a dynamic institution capable of evolving with the times. Failure to do so risks further eroding public trust and undermining the very foundations of these institutions. The eroding foundation of a building is a powerful metaphor for what happens when institutions fail to adapt. People walking away from a protest signifies a loss of faith, a turning away from systems that no longer serve their needs. The Spanish monarchy, and indeed all traditional institutions, must heed these warnings and take proactive steps to secure their future.